Good morning, everybody. If I could have your attention, why don't we go ahead and we're almost full, and we're early, but we have a big agenda, so we thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and get started. You know, first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone. It's a great pleasure again to have everybody not only attending, but attending in person. And we've got, as you can see, we've got quite a full agenda today. We really are going to try to accomplish three things. The first 7 items, after John gives us an overview, are really updates on priorities that groups of this of our organization have been working on. In you know, I'll tell you in advance, a lot of tremendous work has been done virtually, in person, et cetera, over the last 2 years. And I think it's important for us to see the progress that everyone's made. Secondly, after we go through the updates, we're going to have a little bit of a reflection of where we've been as an organization for the SLC, you know, really with formally organizing, I think, around 2014 in what we've done over the last 8 years. And then the last part, I think, very importantly, is talking about where are we going in the future, what are their priorities. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges in the environment that we're in, you know, some just with the economy, but some seemingly structurally that affect not only the country, but Berrien County and all the organizations in this room. So in short, we have a full agenda, and we're going to ask folks to go through it while at the same time having the appropriate dialogue that we should have. But it is exciting. It's exciting what the folks in this community are doing, the opportunities that we're pursuing, and meeting the challenges that we have and are going to have going forward. Dr. Hamill has not joined us today. He's got, as you can imagine, new organizations, board commitments that are going to keep him away, but he's fully up to date and supportive of what we're doing today. We've got probably several new faces in this room, some not so new, but I'd like to highlight our new board members. First, Michelle Height. I think Michelle's not new to the room, but has taken over government best practices. Shane Lees, heading up AEP, is here today. Shane, nice to have you. Not a new name, but a returnee, Todd Gustafson, from president of Connexus. Todd, welcome. And Eric Hopstock, superintendent of Berrien Riza. Eric, are you here? Maybe he will be here. But these are the four new board members that have come onto our board this fall. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to give us an update of the progress that we've been making. John?
Thank you, Jeff. Can't forget the coffee.
No.
All right, thank you very much. It's great to be together again for the second in-person summit that we're having today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about where we were last spring and what some of the asks were of all of us as SLC, and in particular as leaders in the community, leaders in our own organizations and in the community as a whole. The goals and objectives that we put forward in the committee work that we're doing, many of you are leaders of those particular committee organizational structures here at the Strategic Leadership Council. And the idea behind it, of course, is that collectively we can do more to affect change by finding ways to work together in some of these areas. I did my best to try to identify some areas that are in the yellow. We still have some work to do. We're still working towards goals and objectives. I won't walk through each and every one of these because each of the committees are going to give a bit of an update of where they've been and what they've been up to. These asks are important, though. They're important because it keeps us all on track outside of our own organizational needs and our own work that we're doing to try to solve some of the problems that we have. I think you'll be impressed with some of the work that the Best Practices Committee is doing, in particular with the help of Juan Ganoum and John. The both of them have really done an amazing job of identifying a big issue in Michigan as it relates to some of the constitutional and statutory interactions of municipal funding as well as school funding. So that's a different conversation that we're going to continue to have. Harbor redevelopment, we're going to get a great update from Dan Fetty. That is an extraordinary opportunity for the future. Transportation continues to be some risk areas we see. We'll get a little bit of an update on where we're going with that and an announcement coming your way during that particular section, we'll be making an announcement about SLC diving back in onto this transportation question. Housing diagnostic tool, announcements coming there too. We've had excellent communications with our original funders, both the Berrien Community Foundation, United Way of Southwest Michigan, as well as the Pokagon Fund. The suggestion being, what has worked? How can we do a better job with that tool? And is it time to update the tool? Is it time to take into account pandemic impact and effect? And do we have a really good understanding of where the crossover is between both supply and demand in the housing stock and the housing market? Interestingly, that housing discussion has led to many other discussions, which you'll hear in the second half of today. Leadership Accelerator. This may be the fun portion of today. The relationship that the Strategic Leadership Council has after working cooperatively with Connexus Group prior and now Lake Michigan College, both Ken, Dr. Flowers, and of course our host today, which we should say thank you to our host, Trevor, and Lake Michigan Community College. Lake Michigan College, please welcome them and thank them for having us here. Thank you, Trevor. Trevor's a board member too, so I want to make sure I say really nice things about him. So thank you very much, Trevor. At the same time, this last topic is Berrien County. Who are we? What do we want to be? We're going to talk about that as we move forward later today after a little bit of a break. But an aggressive front portion of the agenda, our speakers, all are subject expert individuals presenting today in their particular area. Our goal and objective is to give more of a high-level overview. Normally during the summits, we dive pretty deeply. Today, let's give some of that high-level overview, find out where we are, where we need to be, and be prepared then for the second half of today, which is to talk about some real risk factors that we see in today's economy. You'll hear from Rob Cleveland. You'll hear from Todd Gustafson. You'll hear from me giving a little bit of background on where SLC has been. The three of us are going to kind of set the stage for a tabletop exercise that'll get us up and moving into some other rooms and work cooperatively together. After all, that's what we're supposed to be doing. So with that, let's move on to today's agenda. Please help me welcome Commissioner Terry Freeling to talk a little bit about one of the big initiatives that the county has undertaken recently with the help of Southwest Michigan Planning, as well as all of us who have helped to dive in on this topic. Please help me welcome Commissioner Terry Freeling. Then you can see it, obviously.
Oh, excellent. Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I really appreciate John inviting me to come to speak on this initiative. It's something I'm very passionate about. Just as a brief introduction, my name is Terry Freeling. I'm a county commissioner. I have served for the past 7 years. I serve for District 8, which covers Oronoka Township, Baroda Township, and Lake Township, which includes the city of Bridgman and the village of Baroda. So 4 years ago, I would have never thought that I would be standing here in front of this group presenting the information and the journey that Berrien County has been on. When Berrien County started this discussion in late 2018, I was working to convince my colleagues and stakeholders that broadband was not just a luxury, but that it was a necessity, in essence, a fourth utility. So certainly, I lived that digital divide, and maybe some of my colleagues didn't do that. And I am a business owner, farmer, and a mother of 2 young school-aged children. And I am definitely disadvantaged in being able to be competitive in my market and also allowing opportunities for my children to be able to do schoolwork at home. And so, with that having been stated, the FCC's map, Form 477, claims that I live in a census tract that is served. Today, we all have experienced that lack of connectivity, and we understand how critical connectivity is to our day-to-day life. Some people would even say that we are in the 4th industrial revolution. A little bit of backstory. In the discussions, we realized that we really needed to argue what the FCC's map claimed versus what we knew the lay of the land was within Berrien County. And so we partnered with an organization, a company called Merit Network. And what you're looking at here is the results of a countywide survey that we did last year We sent this out and asked as many residents to participate in collecting the data so we understood what actually existed within Berrien County versus what the FCC claims existed. And so the image that you're looking at on the left is the actual results of the survey responses. In comparison to what you see on the right, everything in blue is considered served in Berrien County. Everything in white is unserved. One of the other things that we discovered in the 1,062 census blocks was that 76% of those census blocks that were claimed to be served actually had individuals living within it that could not get service because it didn't have the infrastructure existing for them to connect to it. And so based on this finding and the once in a lifetime opportunity of funding through the American Rescue Plan dollars, Berrien County took on an initiative, and we took some of that ARPA fund, $6 million, and appropriated it for a sub-grant which municipalities and other organizations could apply for to help bridge that digital divide. We've also worked with some grant writers to provide to those municipalities and organizations so that if they needed assistance to be able to help with this application, they could go to Southwest Michigan Planning Commission and they could work with the leaders that were there to help with the grant writing. We also have modeling and cost estimating software that we've purchased and allowed for it to be available and accessible to those organizations who wanted to come and partner with the county for bridging that digital divide. In the meantime, the task force continued to work and outreach with all of the internet service providers to be able to have those conversations of where there were true opportunities to gain and build consensus and synergize the infrastructure that was already existing there within Berrien County. We also realized through the efforts that we had done with Merit Network that we needed more precise mapping in order to see what next steps needed to be taken, both for the municipalities, but most importantly for the county as we lead. So we worked with a vendor called DCS Technologies to map out throughout all of Berrien County on a parcel level rather than census blocks to let us understand truly what was unserviceable because there was no infrastructure to connect to. And then we could also learn who the true service providers were within Berrien County and where they actually existed. So this map that you're looking at here is the actual coverage area that meets the current FCC standard of defined broadband of 100 megabits per second download and 20 megabits per second upload. That's the new defined standard of broadband. The different colors that you're going to see here on the map actually represent the different service providers. The most predominant one that you see here is red, and that is Comcast. This map is probably a little more telling, and it gets us a more granular level of understanding the delta that exists between the FCC's maps and what currently exists here within Berrien County. So we overlaid the service providers with another layer that you see here represented in orange as those parcels that are actually designated as served by the FCC, but that don't currently have service available to that parcel. We identified just shy of 12,000 parcels that are unserviceable, but that could be an opportunity for us to serve. I want to go back to that map because this is important. So why this is important and why the work that the county has been doing is so important is because all of those orange parcels represents unrealized opportunity currently within Berrien County for economic development, for public safety, for quality of life. And so here's the other reason why this is important. Because the FCC is working on maps right now. It was supposed to be completed in November, but they're claiming that it's delayed, so they won't be ready. The state is working on maps as well to understand the lay of the land to this level, but they won't be ready. We as a community have until December 1st to challenge the FCC's maps in order to have opportunities for the funding that is on their horizon, like the BEAD grants through the NTIA, the MyHigh-Robin grants through the state of Michigan, and even for the ARPA funds as they look at what truly is needed to be served and what is not currently served. And so this is incredibly critical, and the work that we've done within Berrien County, we are on the front edge of most of the communities within the state of Michigan. And so what we did also is worked with the vendor and our GIS department, Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, in order to break this down to a municipal level. I know it's really hard to read, but you can actually go to the Berrien County's website and you can pull up this data and you can blow it up and you can actually see the data for each municipality and what is served, what is unserved, and what that delta might look like within your community. And so with that, we also worked with our incredible GIS department, and we created an interactive dashboard that will be real-time data for the lay of the land as it looks for broadband. On any given day, you'll be able to go to our website. You'll be able to see how many parcels there are within Berrien County, how many parcels are unserved currently for broadband. You can even go in and you can see it municipality by municipality. Now, I do have an interactive link in this, and I'm not certain if it will allow me to go into it today, but the map in the corner that you see, you can actually click on that, you can blow that up. You can move it around. You can actually see your home specifically. You can click on it, and it will give you all the layers of who the providers are that currently exist for that parcel, what funding sources may have been awarded to that particular parcel data, and if there's an opportunity for us to gain. And the county is going to use this for us to be able to strategize a county-wide plan. The interactive portion of that is not there. And so what I'd like to say with regards to that, I'm going to go back and then I'll wrap it up, John. You know, it was recently mentioned to me that it's really hard to land an airplane while you're still building it. And that's how I feel about the lay of the land for broadband. Where we were in 2018 to where we are today has changed so much. And as the chair of our broadband task force, we have been incredibly nimble. We are fortunate to have the staff and the partnerships that we have had to be able to navigate through this. Berrien County is well suited for the opportunities that are on the horizon for us to bridge this gap once and for all. And as the county looks at what our plans are going to entail, how we can work to help our municipalities, and how we can strategize for a county-wide initiative, I would ask you and challenge you to think within your own organization what opportunities there may exist for you. Are there funding sources that may not be available to the county that through public health for telemedicine or public safety, agriculture, quality of life, are there funding sources that could potentially exist? Has your organization considered writing a letter of support or passing a resolution to help us with our initiative? Because as we go out for federal funding, that is going to be critical in the scoring process. And most importantly, because we have this sub-grant opportunity, if you're a municipality, have you considered applying for it? The deadline is October 31st. And that will help us as we craft our application, that we can find those partners to work with throughout the county in order to bridge this divide once and for all. Thank you. Thank you. So I know just with the NTIA BEAD grant, there's $42 billion with a B dollars on the table. The state MyHigh Robin grant is $250 million. And some of the other opportunities that are out there, I mean, we could continue to go on and on, but we're talking about millions in pots here and there. I think the USDA Reconnect just appropriated an additional couple $2 billion for that initiative as well. Yeah.
Follow-up question. So have you, or do you have a sense of what would it take? What would the checkbook look like to solve this issue in Marion County?
Certainly. Actually, in the presentation that we received as the county commissioners, we received an estimate between 48 million to 83 million. But the one thing that doesn't include is the partnership of the ISP. That's total cost all in. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. To the Commission, to Administrator Doucette, and to all of those who have helped to shepherd this project through, it certainly sets the stage in exactly what Strategic Leadership Council's goals and objectives are, which is to collectively understand what the concern is, and then figure out a way that each and every one of us with our disparate organizations can align around that particular initiative. So the county has really left us in a very good position to work cooperatively together on this particular topic and ensure that we support whatever pots of money might be chased after in the days and months and years ahead. Next up is transportation. A bit of an update on where we are in transportation, please. I don't know if you know this guy. It's Dan Fetty. Please welcome Dan Fetty to the stage.
That's an old college photo, right? Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me apologize for the way I sound. I've been battling a case of laryngitis for the last week. So although I may sound awful, it's probably a benefit to you because I'm not going to be able to speak that long, and this will be mercifully short, I think. Thank you. So I'm here to give an update on where we stand with transportation and countywide transportation, public transit systems. And I think it's helpful to kind of step back and remember what the kind of geography of transportation looks like in Berrien County. This is something that the SLC has been directly involved in for a number of years now. But you will recall, those who have seen this before, that we have 3 different transit providing systems in Berrien County. It used to be 4, it's 3 now. We have Benton Harbor Takata, which is the dial-a-ride system that serves Benton Harbor and the surrounding urban area from that. We have the system, the dial-a-ride system in Niles, which now encompasses the City of Buchanan. City of Buchanan used to have its own transit system. City of Niles and Buchanan have merged and is now being managed by the City of Niles. So we've gone to 4 to 3, which is good news, it's progress. And then everything else outside of those urban areas is served by Berrien Bus, and that's the rural system. Now, the challenge we've faced in Berrien County for 40 years now is that because those systems are delineated based on an urban and rural status, they receive different funding from the federal and state government. But they also are prohibited from, in a sense, providing service outside of their particular geography. That would be, for example, Berrien County can serve every place in the county but the urban area surrounding the Twin Cities and the urban area within Niles and Buchanan. By the same token, the urban systems can only serve residents within their area. And this creates a huge challenge for trying to transport people back and forth. I mean, you know, riders don't necessarily recognize municipal boundaries. They just know that they need to get from point A to point B. And you've seen examples before, I think, of an individual, say, who lives in, well, let's say the city of Bridgman, who needs to go to the city of Niles. In many cases, they will have to take 3 different bus rides just to get to the city of Niles. They may have to originate with Takata, transfer to Berrien Bus, and then transfer again to the city of Niles. It's 3 different rate structures, 3 different scheduling, processes and 3 different routes that will have to be coordinated just for one ride. This has created a huge challenge, not only for basic quality of life activities like grocery shopping, going to the doctor, attending educational events, but also for work-related transportation uses. For example, just trying to get a ride to your job can be quite challenging in this county. It also leaves, unfortunately, a large area of our population completely unserved right now. And this would be the urban area that encompasses St. Joe Township, Lincoln Township, Royalton Township, parts of Lake Township, Stevensville, Bridgman. Residents in those communities technically fall within the Takata service area, but are not currently receiving any service whatsoever. That area, by the way, that I just described, constitutes about 40 to 50% of the total population in Berrien County. They're completely left out of the transit system. So the goal all these years has been to try to find a way to coordinate these systems, get rid of these jurisdictional boundaries, bring tighter coordination amongst the 3 systems, and also principally to find a way to serve that unserved area. This map kind of illustrates everything I just droned out about. You can see the block in the bottom. That would be the Niles-Buchanan area that's served by the city of Niles right now. You can see everything that's kind of the tan color, that's the Berrien bus area. Everything in green is what Takata currently serves, but everything in orange is technically part of Takata's service area that is currently not receiving service. And that's when I say, 40 to 50% of the county's population lives in that area right there. Now, you'll recall that we went through a series of studies, both a consolidation plan to try to figure out a way where these 3 systems could formally consolidate into a transit authority or some other managed nonprofit corporation. We also engaged in a large service plan that said, okay, if we were to consolidate these systems, what would that service look like? What could be provided and how much would it cost? Unfortunately, the price tag of that service plan came out to, I believe, $6 million annually, which was a large chunk of change to try to deal with at the time. We were moving in a direction to try to implement aspects of that service plan as a demonstration to the public of what could be done under a consolidated system. COVID, of course, blew those plans apart, interrupted everything, and basically the systems were on life support for about 2.5 years, just trying to figure out a way to maintain the basic services that we currently have. In addition to that, we saw, as I think everyone in this room probably has dealt with, a huge problem in employee retention. And the capacity of all the systems actually diminished quite substantially during the period of COVID. Fortunately, over the last 6 months, we've seen that capacity start to rebuild. More drivers have been hired, more dispatchers have been hired, more operations managers are now in place. So the capacity of the 3 systems is essentially back to where it was in pre-COVID times, which is important because that provides us with the opportunity to try to start to do something different now. In addition to that, because of the ARPA funds, the CARES Act, the Infrastructure Jobs Act, there's a considerable amount of additional federal funding available for transit right now. The federal cost share of public transit has more than doubled in the last 2 years. So while many of our systems here, particularly Berrien Bus, were kind of on life support financially, we now find that we're essentially flush with cash. So we have the capacity, the personnel, and the assistance from the federal government to actually expand services for the first time in probably 40 years. All of which is to say, now is the opportunity, if we're going to find a solution to this, if we're going to find a way to provide service to the unserved portions of our community, and if we're going to find a way to kind of bridge these divides, these jurisdictional divides, we have the money, we have the personnel, and we have the resources to do it right now. Now, that money isn't going to last forever. We know that it'll expire. We're hopeful that it'll last through 2025, maybe 2026 if we're lucky. But we do have the time and the money to kind of play around with some different ideas and try to expand and demonstrate to the public what could be done in a truly integrated and coordinated system. So what we are asking right now is for the SLC, for the members in this room, and particularly for the municipal officials who are governing areas that don't receive service currently, to start working with us over the next 6 months to try to see if we can get this thing moving forward again. Put these plans back in place, try to find a way for better coordination and consolidation, and try to find a way to provide service to these areas that currently aren't receiving service. Now that's going to cost some money, and it's going to require the commitment and participation of the communities that aren't receiving service right now. But we think it's a modest cost for these communities to participate in a system that could actually provide healthcare, educational, job-related services to get people to their doctor's appointment, to the grocery store, to their place of employment. So that is the ask right now, and we're hoping, Kim Gallagher and I were just talking this morning about this, we're hoping that we can use this body to start coordinating that and to try to find a solution to this issue moving forward. Thank you.
And that leads to this. The SLC is going to reconstitute the Transportation Committee because the unserved areas should not be unserved after 8 years of trying to push this initiative forward, and the leadership that Dan and the commissioners and the administrators have had in trying to bring together an understanding of the problem, first and foremost, driven by data, followed then by what? Action steps to try to solve the problem. There is no reason in today's environment that we would ever allow an entire set of population to not be able to move between jobs, educational opportunities, and healthcare opportunities. So late November, look for us to pull that date together. The hope would be that with all of our crazy calendars and schedules, we'll be able to put something together and on the calendar for all of you municipalities, local elected officials, and others to come together to talk about where we've been and where we need to go. What does that ask look like going forward? It's a big lift, but it's a lift that over time and methodically managing the expectations, we should be able to take advantage, as Dan just said, of the opportunities that exist today. So please join us in that effort. Your businesses and industries, those that you may not even know need that transportation, are going to be identified as critical components of us being successful for all of our region and for the economic growth that we know is necessary. With that, we move on to our local municipalities. Please help me welcome. This one is fantastic. It's not a mug shot of Chris, but nonetheless, Chris is thinking pensively about how we're going to solve the transportation issues. Please welcome Michelle Height and Chris Mason.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Height, and I am the New Buffalo Township Supervisor and Chairperson of the Best Practices Committee.
Good morning. I'm Chris Mason. I'm the President Pro Tem of the Village of Stevensville, and I'm also on the Best Practices Committee. Next. We were really hoping our mug shots would be eliminated if we provided other photos of something to start it off. So this is Michelle's cat Gus and my dog Theo. That's it. So since I've been involved, sorry, I'm standing in front of you now, hot mic. Since I came on board, my first meeting was actually the housing tool. We came down and we got to be a part and kind of see what was going on. I kind of took that back to the Village of Stevensville, and I want to say like 2 weeks later, we had a developer come to us, and on Old Karen Court, tucked in sleepy old Stevensville, we've had like 14 parcels vacant for like 12 years, I want to say. Had a developer come in, he's like, hey, we want to do these houses, but your ordinance says we need an extra 4 square feet for garages. So per that collaborative effort of what we were trying to do here in Best Practices, it's like we need to be more friendly, more cooperative with the developers. And so that's something we've been kind of harping on is, these developers, they're not coming around as often as possible, especially coming out of COVID. So that opportunity, and as you can kind of see there, 2 houses living out in the woods, those are going to be developed pretty soon, and we're excited, learning from other communities that are kind of pushing through those things.
And in New Buffalo Township, we have a 37-acre parcel that was given to New Buffalo area schools. Much of it is wet, but not all, and it's pretty much basically landlocked, but they were able to attain a 1-acre parcel that connects to Lubke Road, which is very close to our elementary school. In the summer, was able to obtain an 8-acre parcel that really connects to this road and is directly across the street from our elementary school. So this creates a really exciting opportunity for us to work with them. The school owns the property. Now they have a good portion that is buildable. What would this look like for some housing for young families, workforce type housing? Of course, we're all trying to obtain. The school has a very robust building and trades program, so that could be helpful also. But this is exciting, a very exciting project for us. We're actually meeting on Wednesday to start looking at what kind of possibilities there are for this parcel. Also, Benton Harbor's Project T, Alex Little from Community Economic Development at City of Benton Harbor has been keeping us apprised of that project, the mixed-use housing project on the old Mercy Hospital property, and we were happy to support them. Our municipalities shared letters of support for them for some funding that they were seeking for that project, and we just continue to look for opportunities like this where we can support and encourage housing developments in our communities.
So when we met 6 months ago, we had Juan and John come up and really kind of get into the nuts and bolts of Headley and Prop A. Just out of curiosity, how many people were at our meeting in September? A lot of familiar faces when they gave the presentation. So over the past 8 months since I've been involved, it's been housing, housing, housing. We've been peeling the onion back, if you will, and it kind of feels like sometimes we're one step forward, 2 steps back. In last month's meeting, in their presentation, I think Bill Gates would have wept a tear to understand what they were able to do on an Excel sheet, and it was a beautiful thing. So what they presented to us was truly a solution to a vast problem. And I know for those of you who were 6 months ago at our update, we're operating municipalities that are, we need more funding, but we are capped on that. And this is a 30,000-foot view. I was really excited to see on our agenda that we're going to be breaking out into groups to kind of set some long-term goals for our community, because year after year, we're all managing P&Ls and balance sheets for our municipalities, and it's, hey, we're treading water, we're maintaining, this is great, but we're all taking collaborative effort, and that's why we're here, to kind of have that 30,000-foot view and also be leaders in the not just in our community, but the state of Michigan, and help change legislation and really fund things that we need to sustain our community. So don't want to spend too much time on that. Those guys are the wizards, the experts. We're really going to be putting a lot of chips in their basket, for lack of better analogies, because they're really going to be shaking things up, and we really appreciate all the time and the wisdom they kind of shared with us, not only 6 months ago, but a month ago at our last meeting.
Short-term rentals, of course, a hot topic for everyone, but municipalities in particular. The municipalities most are looking at passing resolutions stating their opposition to House Bill 4722. We just really want local control. It's not a one-size-fits-all for any of us. Everyone manages it differently. I'll let you kind of talk about the letter.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of ended our meeting last month after an awesome presentation. More of a call to action, short-term goal is we really want to get a letter to Lansing. All 21 communities, municipalities that are involved in best practices adopted a letter and an ordinance to go to Lansing to deter them from passing this House bill. When Michelle and I were kind of putting this deck together, having a beer, I was like, all right, let's get a hot tub on that slide, because I don't know what your housing situation is, but it could very easily be a hot tub next to your backyard of someone you don't know, and they're partying every night. So not to strike too much fear in everybody, but get with your local legislators. The potential threat that will interrupt our living scenario here in Southwest Michigan. As someone who sometimes tends bar at a brewery, I've met a lot of people since COVID, and they're all moving here from out of town, and they're also vacationing from out of town. Believe it or not, those things are still true. So get with your local municipality, get with somebody in this room, get with me. I think we're all on the same page, and that's a really cool opportunity of being in best practices, because we're all on the same page, and we all want to kind of see this thing get detoured. So anything else, Michelle?
Thanks.
I think Chris is selling himself short. You may have been there. It's called Watermark, and they do a fantastic job as one of our up-and-coming small businesses that continue to grow. Very interesting. I don't know that I would have expected that our Best Practices Committee would be diving in on some of the legislative topics and issues, but it has been very, very important because, as you know, the intent of that Best Practices Committee is to bubble up the topics and issues that matter to the municipalities themselves. And so HB 4722 and then Headley and Prop A, two very detailed and restrictive sorts of either constitutional or statutory concerns that the municipalities really do want to dive into and try to solve. So we very much appreciate that. And the letter to Lansing is going to be really critical. Lame duck is just a couple of weeks away. Of course, the election is a week from tomorrow, and then after that, we begin the lame duck cycle, and I know Representative Pashulka is here also. That is a chaos period of time in Lansing and often strikes fear in the hearts of municipalities across the 83 counties of the state of Michigan because you just don't know what pops out. The suggestion there is that there be a letter in particular to the governor to veto 4722 if it in fact does pass, as it did committee 2.5 weeks ago in Lansing. So we'll see what happens. We move on to Friends of Berrien County Trails. So many great things to update here that we wanted to bring in some new faces. Of course, you know Gary Wood. He's been the face of this and Friends of Berrien County Trails, which started right here at Strategic Leadership Council, but we also get to welcome Beat Stocker to join us also. So please welcome Gary and Beat.
Thank you, John. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to give you a very, very brief update on the master plan. We are just about there. I gotta, let's see, green, okay. We hope to have the plan completed within the next month. That's our goal, and this is just to show you the sort of misleading when you see the contents, you know, 6 sections, but it's a huge document. I mean, we're pushing at least 140 pages or something, lots of detail, and it's just kind of interesting in terms of all the engagement we've had. The public engagement has been extraordinary. We've done a lot of analysis, and we have many recommendations. I think one of the key sections is going to be the toolbox, and we've really oriented it towards from bottom up, meaning providing data and resources for municipalities to be able to look at trails in their community, how they might develop them and move them forward. As you can see from this graph here, the bulk of what we're looking at in terms of new trails is in the area of paved shoulders, which makes a lot of sense. And then we've got shared use paths, and currently we've only got about 35 miles of paved trails in our county. And in terms of miles, it's interesting to note the county has, I think, not counting subdivisions, around 1,200 road miles. So that just sort of gives you a data point. Next up is, and this is kind of logical if you look at it, the main recommendation is going to be around the network and how we connect. And when you look at the hubs that we have in Berrien County, which trail hubs, to my mind, is the Twin Cities, New Buffalo, and Niles. And we want to create this regional network that connects us. So let's talk about, I've already given you a lot of propaganda. You'll get more about the Marquette Greenway, but think about this. Marquette Greenway will connect us really, Milwaukee goes all the way down through Chicago on the lakeshore, come down to the south part of Chicago, connect to the Marquette Greenway, takes you up to New Buffalo, Then the linear park, and the hope is that the linear park will take us from New Buffalo all the way up to St. Joe, Benton Harbor, and go further up, as Beat will be talking about what they're doing, go up Blue Star, go all the way to South Haven, connect to the Cal Haven, go all the way across. That's extraordinary when you think about it in the big picture. Then if you go down to Goshen, Indiana, and see what they're doing at Elkhart, get on that path, go up to the Indiana-Michigan River Valley Trail. That takes you up through Niles, and the goal, go through Bering Springs, come all the way up to St. Joe, Benton Harbor. And then the third leg in this triangle, if you will, and also this will connect our county parks, is the Old Sauk Trail, which is the name, it was a Native American trail, which is where Route 12 is, connecting that all the way across. And one of the reasons that's really important was when we were doing our community engagement efforts at our community workshops, it was noted by a lot of riders, bike riders, how they saw New Buffalo as a hub, and they wanted to get from South Bend, from Indiana, and come across our state and get over to New Buffalo so they could either go to Chicago or go up or go north. So that is one of the key recommendations that we're going to be making. I just want to, before I go to the next slide, I just want to make a comment in general about the importance of data and the importance of work that this group has been doing for several years. And we are at a unique place because of all that hard work. As you'll see today, you've already seen it in the presentations before I spoke, we have done a lot of hard work. We're in an extraordinary position here to move this county in a huge way, in a transformational way. And I hope that we could continue to do that. But looking at the data with broadband, we worked with all the municipalities in the county. And I just think it's amazing, and I just want to compliment the Leadership Council for doing this. True example of leadership. Okay, the favorite topic today is the Marquette Greenway, and we're happy to report that we've raised, out of our budget of $5.6 million, we've raised $5.3 million, and we're at $300,000, actually a little less than that, because I'm happy to report we got a $25,000 grant from the Upton Foundation, so that's helped to lower that number. As you can see, and I want to point this out, one of the things that I've noticed in the years I've lived in this county, we were not opportunistic, and we left a lot of dollars on the table. And this shows you, look, federal government is putting in over about $3.6 million in this project for a 4-mile section in Michigan. And talk about the work that Terry Freeling's committee is doing on broadband, the millions of dollars that are available out there. We need to seize those opportunities in terms of federal and state dollars. If we don't do it, another county or another community is going to do it. So we need to step up and be opportunistic. And then the next thing I'll show you is that we're having the Give Back dinner. You've got this information, I think, on your table, but on November 3rd, Bentwood Tavern is hosting this Give Back dinner, which 50% of the gross sales, food and beverage, is donated to our efforts. And I'm going to introduce Beat. So thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. My name is Bayat Stocker. I work for Whirlpool Corporation. I've actually been here 31 years working for Whirlpool. Berrien County is a great place to be, live, work. I'm originally from Switzerland. I'm going to talk about trails today. In Switzerland, some of you might have been there, or in Europe, trails is a part of life. It's not even a debate or a discussion about what we do, get outside, and how those projects get started and get funded. So I think Gary undersold a little bit the project that he's been talking about. One of the maps that he showed, Berrien County actually happens to be an incredible white space of lack of trails in Michigan and in surrounding states. And the master plan, which is an incredible body of work, shows in how we can move forward in that. It's a long-range plan, and it provides a lot of guidance on not only the projects, but how to get those projects moving forward. So really commend Gary and the group that worked on that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Catalyst program. Happened to stumble into a Whirlpool cycling club some years ago. Kind of started out thinking it was just about riding and getting out and meeting other riders, going to Watermark on Thursday nights. But in reality, is most riders were asking us about what's the status of trails and what can we do to make those happen better? How do we make riding more safe for our families? And so we said, hey, we know we need a master plan. We got to work on that. How can we catalyze some projects, leveraging Whirlpool, leveraging Cornerstone, Abbott Marsh, Berrien County, a variety of other partners, and said there's some projects available to us as we think about, downtown Benton Harbor, St. Joe, our campus properties, and other projects that might be happening in the community. How do we catalyze some projects and move the ball forward while this master plan work was going on? And that's really what we did. So we kind of looked at this map. You can see it mostly focuses in the Benton Harbor area, moves north. We really said, how do we leverage the Harbor Shores trails, improve those, and ultimately drive 10 miles of new trails that connect 20 miles in total, and really make them a combination of multi-use paths, mountain biking paths. How do we improve sidewalk access? So at the end of the day, these point-to-point connection points are more obvious, as opposed to stopping and starting and a lack of clarity on how to move around that area. What I'm happy to report today is, I would say, a very important project. The Harbor Shores work was already done earlier this year, but this project we just kicked off late last year and had our grand opening for Phase 1. We call it the Lakeview Trail, the logo on the right. And what's really important is we said in order to catalyze it, we actually have to put some skin in the game. So we really mobilized our campus at GHQ, and we put a mountain bike trail with Phase 1 of 5 miles opening in September. Many of you were there. I know, Brian, I stalk you on Strava. I've seen you there. But at the end of the day, I think what's really critical is this is just a starting point, and we're going to have Phase 2 opening in the spring of next year, which is the west side of M63. And we'll also have amenities at the trailhead. We'll build a tunnel, make it safe underneath the road. And really, what I'm happy to report, most importantly, is we're really getting usage. It's only been 5 weeks since we opened the trails officially, and we're seeing up to 150 riders a week, mostly on the weekends. And what I'm really excited about is we're seeing a lot of kids out there and families. The kind of people that really had a hard time getting to trails and having a place to ride safely. And it's important that these trails and these connection points ultimately become a place where our community can go outside and be seen and interact with each other. It's really amazing. I've been on the trail doing weed maintenance. I've been amazed at how many people come up and just thank us, and they congregate together, and they're all spending time out on the trails, but also with each other. As I mentioned, Phase 2 will open next spring, and we'll have another grand opening then, and I'm really excited about it, because then it allows us then to make this corridor project, which is next. This corridor project will then move up along M63. It's probably one of the projects we started with. It requires some grant funding and some other detailed planning. But at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. It's about starting with a project on GHQ and then bringing it a corridor and allowing our community to be seen and outside in a safe transportation manner. Oops, looks like some of my bullets didn't come out quite well. It's okay, I can recite them. It's fine. I think some learnings that we've had as these public-private partnerships are critical. They do work. We have to come together. It's about these maybe some private dollars, public dollars, but more importantly, it's many of the people in this room working together on these projects and figuring out how to remove roadblocks. Thank you. Goes without question, do support the master plan when it gets announced in a month. Each project's unique. There are real challenges to overcome. What I found out is in these series of projects that we've done, these hurdles are, we can keep moving the ball forward. There's nothing that's insurmountable in these projects, so don't be intimidated by the task at the beginning. These projects are real and they work. It's quite clear these projects do benefit the community. They benefit attracting talent to our community, and they do bring economic development. And then, I do kind of make a plug here to support the M63 corridor project. We've made a lot of progress on it. The grant process is unfolding, and we're going to submit several this year yet. I mentioned Love Creek just as a project. We just hosted a big bike event. We raised $17,000. It's one of many untapped and underserved, beautiful natural resource we have in our community. So there's many projects like that waiting to happen. And then, as we build out the Lakeview mountain bike trails, let's continue to build the network out. There's lots of opportunities to make that network bigger. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Beat. I appreciate it. I think one of the really unique things, and it's undersold right now by Beat and the work that is happening, the folks at Whirlpool have been involved from the very beginning in recognizing the value of the trail system and recognizing the value of getting outdoors and being a part of this great community that we have. The trail system itself has its greatest opportunity simply because we're organized and on top of things as it relates to an actual master plan. It's been referenced. It is quite detailed. There are many, many hands that have been at work in trying to identify not only what the resources are today, but then by data understanding how we can try to connect all of this together. What Whirlpool did was recognize that this was a chance to be that catalyst, to make sure that municipalities, individual businesses, and organizations that are in this room and not in this room are coordinated together and understanding how to pull all of these threads together into one cohesive fabric of a trail system that benefits the entire region. You all know this when you've tried to attract talent to your businesses and industries or to your municipalities or to the organizations that you work for. Folks are looking for things to go do, right? And wasn't it even more poignant during the years, it felt like more than years, but certainly during the COVID time, right? Where just getting outdoors was a bit of a reprieve from the challenges that we were facing during that period of time, making it all the more important, whether it be broadband or trails, for us to be a community that is attractive and a community that continues to grow. So we thank you very much for all of the work on that and for really Whirlpool Corporation stepping into that question and saying, how can we be a catalyst to have the rest of the county coordinated and connected together with the Friends of Berrien County Trails and that master plan. So a big hand again for the Friends of Berrien County Trails, Gary and Beat. Thank you. So the county is a major player in many different areas. We know that that's the case. Again, thinking regionally, we have to pull these pieces together. Harbor redevelopment has been one of our topics from the very beginning, continues to be a topic because of the incredible opportunities that exist. This is not the only place that things like this exist. We know that there's many opportunities throughout the county. But this is one we've kept a particular focus on at Strategic Leadership Council. And for an update on where we are, we bring up Dan Fetty again. Welcome, Dan.
I see Brian left the room. I was going to ask him if we can get our IT team to maybe like Photoshop a height chart behind that or a name placard. As John had pointed out in one of the original or initial slides here, there are some yellow points here where we have not made the kind of progress that we'd hoped to make, but we're still moving forward in a direction that is hopeful, and I think we'll be in a position this spring to really see something beneficial coming out of this. You'll all recall that prior to COVID, the state of Michigan, through the Office of the Great Lakes, conducted a large-scale study of the St. Joe River and the St. Joe Commercial Harbor, principally focused on development and redevelopment opportunities along the shoreline of that waterway. It was a very ambitious study. I hope that all of you have looked at it. And it was a very long-range focused study. I mean, it was not something that was going to be implemented in 5 or 10 years. It was a 20-year development plan for the communities. But you'll see a number of opportunities within that plan for some real exciting redevelopment along the riverfront, principally in the city of Benton Harbor, but also in the city of St. Joe. But one of the things that came out of that study was the idea that if you're going to promote any kind of redevelopment of these areas, you need to have some kind of coordinated body that can kind of supervise this. That can both manage the waterway, coordinate activities within the waterway, coordinate with the Corps of Engineers for the maintenance of the harbor, and the DNR or Eagle for the maintenance of the river. The area we're talking about is encompassed by 3 jurisdictions: City of Benton Harbor, City of St. Joe, and of course down at the bottom near Pier 1000 there, a little bit of St. Joe Township. And they're all kind of the players that were included in this study. The recommendation that came out of this study was that the communities should establish a working group to try to determine a method of governing the maintenance and the improvements of that waterway. That working group was established, met over the course of about a year. We started right before COVID hit and then kind of had to interrupt that process and began work again around, I think it was 2021, early 2021, when we started meeting on this. That group, comprised of those 3 communities, came up with recommendations, and the principal one is that the 3 communities should form a formal, permanent, established, contractual authority that could coordinate activities for the maintenance of this waterway. The idea is that this group would be advisory only. It would not have jurisdiction for, say, zoning or development approval, but it would be able to work with the Corps of Engineers, the DNR, and then come back to the communities with recommendations on how to improve the waterway and how to improve the adjacent land uses. So we went through this process in 2021 and into 2022. I think I was here in April of this year reporting on where we were at the time. We had completed basically all the work, and we had gotten the elected bodies to sign off on this proposal to create this harbor authority, a formal harbor authority, through a contractual process under state law. The next step then was to develop the articles of incorporation for this authority, taken to all 3 communities, have obviously corporate counsel, the 3 communities review it, weigh in on it, modify it as needed, and then ask these 3 communities to approve this, essentially a contract where they would create this actual permanent body. That's kind of where we were in the spring, and I am sorry to report that I was hoping that when I was here this fall we would have had that accomplished. We have not gotten that finished yet. The articles are drafted. We have to circulate those to the 3 communities. I suspect that we can get this done in the next couple of months. Partly, I think we all kind of got a little sidetracked this summer in trying to acquire and commit as much of the ARPA dollars as we could. The clock is ticking on that, and that became a priority both for the county and I know the 3 local municipalities. But we're coming into a kind of a slower period in a sense for the 3 governments involved, and I'm expecting that between now and throughout the rest of this year, or the rest of this year and into the early winter, we can get the Articles of Incorporation adopted by the 3 communities, impanel this authority, and then be ready in the spring to start taking a look at some projects, which actually is an opportune time because there will be dredging activities coming up this spring that we'll have to coordinate with the Corps of Engineers. Fortunately, that's already in the works. We are going to have to look at some technical problems we're having with the disposal of dredge spoils. John's been working on this a lot, but that's going to be an issue that this new authority is going to have to kind of tackle in the next year. And then finally, which is kind of an encouraging thing, You recall that we all worked together to create this little water taxi system along the St. Joe River that was open this summer. We thought this was kind of just a fun, cute summertime project, and it turned out to be surprisingly popular and widely used. I think it exceeded our expectations, the members of the public and visiting tourists that use this system. And as a result of that, we're now contemplating expanding that system, adding additional stops, particularly with the new Whirlpool apartment complex that's being constructed. We want to add a stop there. We want to add more stops proximate to Silver Beach, bring people across the river from the apartments to some of the commercial activities at the inn over to Silver Beach. These are the kind of things that this new harbor authority will have to work on next spring as we prepare the permitting process and the funding process. So we're a little bit behind schedule, but we'll work diligently this winter and throughout January and February to get this accomplished. So by springtime, we're ready to move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. As you well know, who grew up in the community? I grew up in this community, moved here in '75. My parents set up a medical practice here. My dad did, and you've all been around kind of the Harbor Shores area and the whole riverfront and so forth. And I had the blessing of being able to learn how to sail out of Lake Michigan, and had the opportunity to go up and down the river, and really blessed, right? I honestly didn't even realize, other than there was that giant clover leaf of roadways, there was Osco products and 2 stories of manufacturing and construction all throughout that area. A good buddy of mine lived just north, just before the Ad Center, which is now GHQ for Whirlpool. So I knew this was all existed, but I honestly, even being on the waterways, didn't even know that the Pawpaw River existed. Because it was just covered, right? It was covered by all of that old manufacturing, which really was the hallmark of our region for so long. The opportunities that exist to remake our northern portion of our county and the value that can bring to the entire county and the entire region is really extraordinary. The work that's being done and the visioning that's happening on what this riverfront can look like and what this entire redevelopment can look like really is very extraordinary. So thank you to the county and to the municipalities who are working on that from a governance perspective. It's going to require all of us to lean in for the benefit of the entire county, though, to make sure that we see that. And it's by no coincidence that we put the harbor redevelopment right after the trails. Think about that for a moment. And it's by no coincidence that we talk about how we move people to and from businesses and industries throughout the county for the benefit of providing the value that we need. There is so much happening for all of us in cooperation together on all of these particular topics. With that said, I'm going to call an audible. I'm going to move ahead to the housing diagnostic tool, but come back in just a moment to visit with Devin and Anna. But for a moment, I'm going to jump ahead to the housing diagnostic tool. So you all remember that in partnership with the United Way of Southwest Michigan, as well as the Bering Community Foundation, the Pokagon Fund, Whirlpool, obviously, as well as then Spectrum Lakeland Health, we took a look at what the housing diagnostic tool was for Southwest Michigan. Where are some areas of concern, which all of us anecdotally had some ideas of what that is. I think with our partners at the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, we came up with a tool that really gave us some really good insights. So I had originally planned on having Alan Jeffries from the Realtors Association speak, and you say, well, wait a second, Alan Jeffries is going to speak to us about the housing concerns when it's a municipal question and it's a not-for-profit question, and how we're going to make sure that we have adequate housing, and it's a developer question. Well, ironically, it was that we learned pretty quickly that the realtors found this to be a very effective and helpful tool. He actually got called in as an expert witness in a trial today and was unable, not against him, he's not a plaintiff, he's not in the middle of a prosecution, he's an expert witness for a particular trial that is happening related to property assessment or something to that effect. And so on Friday afternoon, I got the word that he wasn't going to be able to be here. So I thought I'd give a quick couple of updates, change some slides around. First off, the housing diagnostic tool has been used by 3 groups and organizations, with the SLC spearheading that. Of course, we see the Business Developers and Trades group has gotten together a couple of different times. I've got a punchline at the end of this to give you. thank you to Arthur Havlicek for leading that. Arthur has a unique perspective because of the number of businesses and industries that interface at Southwest Michigan Chamber. And so Arthur is chairing that for us. The Housing Resource Network, which is Amanda Drew of the United Way of Southwest Michigan, she chairs that network. And Amanda, how many individuals are on that? 35, 40, where are you, Amanda? There you are. 40 different organizations, something to that effect, who meet on a monthly basis for the purposes of understanding where our risk factors are. The tool itself is a standing committee for them also. Out of that might be some additional advocacy in the government section, which of course Best Practices Committee also has housing, and you heard that referenced by both Chris and Michelle, so thank you very much. But these diagnostic tools are only as good as the data that we have. We need to update that tool. The intent of the Strategic Leadership Council is to contract for an updating of that tool. The meetings have exposed some areas that we may not have taken advantage of or learned about. There's new sets of data that have come in, not the least of which is from the census. And of course, we've seen significant shifts in that supply-demand curve and where those crossovers are, or at least we believe that we have, based upon the pandemic and some of the new individuals that have moved to the community, some others that may not, and really what is that risk factor right now. In fact, we learned this last week in a meeting that we had, both with the Berrien Community Foundation and United Way of Southwest Michigan, that our ALICE population, those individuals who are working, are at greater risk today for a series of reasons that were identified by these two organizations in our meeting and our preparation for what will be the update in 2023. So look for that to be the next update coming shortly. We look forward to additional information. Again, if we're not paying attention to these topics, then they will certainly slide off of our radar. We all have so many things to keep an eye on. SLC will keep an eye on it for all of us, but we need your direct input and engagement in those processes to make sure we're on top of it. So with that, we're not going to do this just yet because we're going to bounce to this right back here. We're going to come back to the Leadership Accelerator. Please help me welcome the chair of the Leadership Advisory Committee, Anna Murphy.
I don't have any slides, so I don't need to worry about that. Do I? Let's just get off that picture, though. Oh. We'll just leave it. We need to update those photos. So, how do we do all of this work? We do it with incredible leaders like all of us in this room. But how do we help to bring up new leaders? So I have the pleasure of chairing the Leadership Accelerator Committee, and I have the pleasure of giving a quick update on the Leadership Accelerator program. Back in the spring, we shared that the Leadership Accelerator had transitioned to LMC. I'm now excited to share that the first cohort under the leadership of LMC has graduated. The 2022 cohort was 21 participants strong. It was a diverse group with regards to age, race, leadership experience, and industry. And thank you to Trevor, Ken, and Pam for the commitment to ensuring a successful transition and a fresh new start to new cohorts. With any effort, initiative, or program, there's always feedback. This feedback was provided through thoughtful and reflective consideration through the lens of the participants. It's helped LMC team determine where a few things should be tweaked for the 2023 cohort to ensure quality and a meaningful experience for those that participate. Before I introduce you to the most important element of this update, I want to invite you all to either consider providing funds to support scholarships and or commit to submitting an application for someone from your business or organization to attend. We know that leadership development boosts employee engagement, increases the organization's ability to deal with gaps in the talent pipeline, and reduces the headaches and costs associated with turnover. With the inclusive curriculum, the Leadership Accelerator experience will provide a great ROI to you and your company. The agenda for the 10-week session is robust, and individuals that you select will increase knowledge, develop new core skills, and have a better insight to their own critical set of strengths. Knowledge, skills, strengths are powerful, and when applied, they can help you all solve problems, leverage new opportunities, and rejuvenate employee engagement. Recruitment for 2023 will begin the first week of November, and a final note, SLC, United Way, and LMC are bringing together a new partnership that will focus on intentional alumni efforts. More to come on that. So I'm not sure of any better way to sell Leadership Accelerator than a first-hand account. In the spring, we had the pleasure of hearing from Devin Flora, the participant, and why she wanted to participate. Now we have the honor of hearing from Devin, the graduate, to tell us about her experience and what it's doing for her. So please welcome Devin.
All right. So last time I said that was my first time public speaking. This is my second time. So good morning. I was very thrilled when Anna asked me to come back and speak about my experience through the Leadership Accelerator program. I first heard of the program actually on LinkedIn, so I know that's my millennial coming out. But I started to do my research on the program, and I made sure to email Ken a bunch of questions before applying. I was really drawn to the program because ultimately I love learning, I love education, and I thought it would be a great opportunity not only to meet other people, but to learn more about myself as a leader. I'm always looking for the next opportunity, and I've really felt like that was it. It was described to be an introspective course, and at that time I wasn't really sure what that meant. But looking back, I can honestly say I learned more about myself in those few short months in that LMC classroom than I probably have over the last several years. All the topics that were going to be discussed really intrigued me as well. Some of my favorites were the collaborative decision-making, emotional intelligence, relationship of politics and leadership, and our trip to Lansing, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. The DISC assessment was an amazing tool, and shout out to all the S's in the room. Overall, the DISC assessment taught me more about my strengths and weaknesses as a leader, as well as how to work better with those who are different than me. Since the program, my relationships with others in my life has drastically improved, both professionally and personally. I also learned something I've always known about myself, and I love harmony, I'm a peacemaker, and I used to despise conflict. This program has shown me that not all conflict is bad, and that through conflict we have an opportunity to grow and learn things from a different perspective. One of the most valuable components of the program is the expansion of your network with other like-minded individuals in the community. I'm not sure if our paths would have otherwise crossed, or if they did, it might have been many years from now. In 2021, when Pat Moody's 40 Under 40 award recipients were first announced, I remember scrolling through the list looking for a familiar name next to mine, and I knew a couple in the community, but by the end of my leadership class, when we had our award ceremony, I actually looked up and I saw two others in my class that were also being awarded that award. So that was really cool. One of the biggest personal takeaways from the program was the improvement of my self-confidence. I've been able to step outside of my comfort zone and take risks I normally would have avoided or thought I wasn't good enough or even qualified to take on. I was recently elected treasurer of the Southwestern Michigan Association of Realtors for 2023. This is a 4-year commitment, which will include serving on the board of directors as treasurer, president-elect, president, and past president. And I am the youngest person to ever serve on the board of directors for our local realtor association, which I'm really excited about and thrilled to serve in this capacity. Also, because of the Leadership Accelerator program, I now have my eyes set on applying for the Michigan Realtors Leadership Academy at the state level. There are only 14 or so seats available throughout the whole state of Michigan, so be sure to wish me luck. And a huge thank you to John Prose and the CEO of Southwestern Michigan Association of Realtors, Alan Jeffries, for their support in my application to that program. I'm eternally grateful for the lessons I've learned and the connections I've made because of the Leadership Accelerator program. I'm up here speaking in front of you all. I'm living on the edge of my comfort zone, and I'm taking risks that I never thought I would. And I know for certain this program has had so much to do with my personal and professional growth. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that believes in, facilitates, and supports this program. And to all of our guest speakers, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to pour into the lives of the future leaders in our community. I just wanted to leave you all with this quote that has resonated with me since graduation. Maybe we don't need to be working harder, but softer and more intentional. Let's all be intentional with our work and especially our time, as it's never guaranteed. Thank you for allowing me to share about my experience, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the program.
That's amazing. That's the intent and the purpose, isn't it? Is that we coordinate together to find ways to bring up that next generation of leaders and to give them opportunities to be very intentional and maybe a little more careful in the way that they do things. And I'm thrilled. I should point out, too, Guy Miller is here also, a graduate just recently of the program also. So the Leadership Accelerator has two very talented professionals in the room today. So thank you both for being here today. We are at the point, once we get through that right there, of taking a quick break. The interactive portion comes in just a few moments. We've got a few updates that we will give upon our return after about 10 to 15 max minutes. Please avail yourselves of coffee, water, juice, whatever else we have in the back, and lots of snacks as we move into a little bit more interactive portion of what the next conversation will be about. Thank you very much. Good morning again, and thank you all. Grab those last cups of coffee. We're going to heat that back up, so as we take a minute here to reconvene, we'll also be gathering again in some breakout rooms for a couple of Q&A. You'll see that in a moment. We'll talk about that after we do a little bit of setup. First off, anytime that you're the person that has to introduce people in the audience, you find yourself in a really awkward position. That awkward position is often a failure of the speaker, and that would be me. Failing miserably to recognize that we had multiple other individuals who participated in the Leadership Accelerator, not just Devin and Guy, but boy, it was sure nice to welcome them, right? So first off, how about those that were alumni before this year's cohort? Raise your hand if you were alumni in the Leadership Accelerator. Thank you very much to all the alumni. Yep, complete. So a complete failure on my part. We not only had Guy and Devin, but we also had Mayor John Humphrey with us, also current graduate of the Leadership Accelerator. We had Gabrielle. Gabrielle is still here. I don't think she walked out in a huff. She's still here. I don't think she's angry with me for that. Maureen was here too. I know she had to leave, but we had multiple other. All right, who else did I miss in the current cohort of the Leadership Accelerator? All right, excellent. Thank you very much. How about a big hand for the Leadership Accelerator and our partner, Lake Michigan College? Thank you. All right, SLC 8 years later. This is the part where I need to do a bit of setup and talk about what our challenge seems to be going forward and where we try to address collectively with our mission as a collective impact organization, where we might try to address this next concern. You all have faced these concerns. You have seen these concerns in your own area of influence, your own area of engagement. But let's start with where we were and what our goals and objectives were. In 2014, let's reflect a little bit upon the past. It was created with all of you in mind, the leaders of all of these different sectors and organizations to come together. Jackie Winship is a former executive director. Of course, we've had multiple individuals participate. Many of you have been chairs of different portions of the organization along the way. The idea was to leverage the data, right? Leverage the data that we can coordinate together, understand and at least acknowledge that there's truth in that data, which seems to be a lot of our political problems right now, right? Is just acknowledging what we believe to be truth. By the time we come to 2022, we see a really challenging situation begin to emerge. It may have always been there, but as we thought about and had discussions around the idea of housing, it became clear that if we were going to talk about housing, you had to have people build the home, didn't you? Or renovate a home, or deconstruct a home so that you could take it from obsolete to functional. You still had to have somebody do the flat work. You still had to have somebody frame a wall. You still needed talent and individuals to be able to functionally change the way we would look at the housing supply-demand curve in the state, in Berrien County. Frankly, There isn't a sector of the state of Michigan, or the region, or the nation for that matter, that isn't facing the same sorts of concerns. And the labor question, I think, really is the next big area. So what I'm going to do in this next segment, with the help of some friends along the way, is to look at a couple of those headlines. You've seen them, but let's just take a look again and remind ourselves of where we are. The labor quotient isn't something very interesting that Rob will be speaking about shortly, that will give you some idea of how we can actually place a metric over the top of work that we may do together to help to solve those problems. But again, it's going to be up to all of us if we choose to take this direction. The municipal survey, we just did an informal survey. You're going to hear about what that risk factor is in our municipalities. We all want our trash to be picked up. We want our streets to be plowed. We want our sewers to work. By the way, that's an important thing. Has anybody ever had a problem with a sump pump? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I had one just recently. And it is a super fun time when you have in-laws in town and it smells just awesome. And so, yeah, great things. And really, what is the state of Berrien County? We'll follow up then. And then, again, we have to look forward, right? Because if we don't set out goals and objectives like focusing on our trail system, like focusing on broadband, like focusing on transportation, all of these areas together and collectively we work together, we have to look at what that future looks like. We know that that mission remains viable. That mission is critical. And it's reminded right there. A prosperous region to live, work, invest, grow, play, and retire for everyone, right? So how can we continue to focus on that? You'll remember that we started as the group as you see here. I won't read the slide to you. You'll remember that this is what the SLC was intended to be and what we have tried to continue to keep our mission strategy and focus on to ensure that we're actually seeing some of those intended outcomes. I think our labor question may very well lead toward challenges in every one of those intended outcomes. I think we could all look to those intended outcomes and say, how are we succeeding? And can we continue to succeed moving forward without recognizing that it's people, it's our own people, and potentially those that are attracted to come to live, to work, to play, to invest, to grow, to retire here in Southwest Michigan, and in particular in Berrien County. So we know that all of those intended outcomes are still incredibly important and critical. So as we look ahead, this is where we are today. This is our structure today. And I have to note that the active and communications is a number that is about half of what it was when we started in 2014. So let me add that as an admonition and a suggestion to each and every one of you. If we agree that these issues and areas are important, we have to reach out to those that are not at the table today and invite them to join the Strategic Leadership Council and dive into the area that is most important in your business or industry. Make it an ROI for you that you can engage in very directly so that we all can see the improvements that we want to see with the metrics that we're following and paying attention to. So that's an admonition for all of us to remember that if we're going to drive impact, we have to ensure that we have the right people at the table along the way. We have to agree on what we face, the challenges we face them head on, right? We don't shy from them. We recognize that it's not an easy situation to deal with transportation. The county has taken a great lead. That's not an easy conversation to have in municipalities. But is it fair that our organizations don't address the areas in orange that Dan and the county showed us that are unserved and completely without service of transportation? I think that's unacceptable. I think we have to find ways to solve those problems. But we do that by virtue of data being the background of that. We question the findings. We ask exactly what that dream state should look like. Where are we trying to go and how are we going to get there? And then what are those actionable and measurable steps? Recall that the data tool for housing had actionable steps to address. Some of them were municipality related. Some of them were zoning related. Some of them were related to business and industries diving in more deeply into those distressed areas. We know that these are some things that we can solve together, but we have to ensure that we use that data as the basis for that. We've had an incredible success. You know, Gary did a marvelous job. Gary, thank you for reminding us that we really should be thankful for how well we have done in so many areas. And then it was mentioned multiple times on multiple different updates that said, we are further along in that coordinated strategy than many other communities of the 83 counties in 83 counties in the state of Michigan. And if we are not at the forefront of seeking that funding and a coordinated strategy, which, by the way, when we work cooperatively together, guess what? Al and I know this from the state of Michigan. You get extra bonus points at the state of Michigan for capital outlay projects because you're a coordinated community with multiple folks saying, we all agree this is good for our entire county. So all of these are places that we can look at movement. Is it the ultimate success yet? No, of course not. That's where our job and responsibility is moving forward. How do we do our very best to continue to see success in these areas? We all agree that robust data is the key. By the way, if you disagree, let's talk about it right now, because it seems to me that we've been using this model all along, right? So if we don't agree with this model, we need to change it, but the idea is we agree. We agree that we can collect this data with all of the different resources that all of you have. We also agree that we can analyze that data in a way that establishes a story map, because that story map leads towards a destination, and that destination is some of that dream state that we've talked about. Questions have to come up. We agreed that housing was a big topic, but we didn't realize that we would come back to an even more base level question about labor, did we? Maybe we should have thought of that. We all had anecdotes about housing, and it's a big deal that we should not lose sight of. But the fact is, it still comes down to the talent to be able to build the homes, to fix the homes, to manage that question. So we have to explore new and creative solutions and establish the success actions. What are the measures that we're going to take to get there, and how do we keep ourselves on track? So really, what is Berrien County's reality? And then really, what is the vision for 2030? How do we establish that next question? That doesn't mean we lose sight of the updates that we had in the first half of today's summit. It means we focus now on what is next and how do we move towards what the Vision 2030 means. Vision 2030, I think, is really important for this very reason. What we do to establish this today, from a labor perspective, which I think you'll hear a little bit about in just a moment, I know you will, what we do today sets the stage for us to develop and grow in the future so that those metrics begin to show success. Increasing population, new businesses and industries being established, new opportunities for transportation for those individuals to make it. Broadband is a part of that question. All of these are interlaced together into a cohesive unit. Let's remind ourselves of some of the things we've seen in just the last 6 months. You and I can pull these headlines up one after another. Is this a deep dive into the data? Not necessarily, right? Because headlines are intended to be just exactly that, a headline. But what is the real problem that underlies all of this? The Board of Directors of Strategic Leadership Council had a robust conversation around this very topic on what does it mean and who really are we in Berrien County? What are our trend lines? Where are areas that we can focus for success? What do we know we can do as it relates to new business and industry coming to Southwest Michigan? Can we manage the businesses and industries with enough staff to handle it today? I think the headlines might lead us towards a conclusion that we're in a struggle, and we're in a struggle to try to do better than the regions around us, rather than simply changing the chairs around and poaching one community for another to manage that particular business or industry. We know that the hiring situation is pretty dire, but it's shifting all the time. So how do we keep up with that data, and how do we keep up with that data in a way that we can focus attention and energy on the kind of training that might be necessary if that's a conclusion we come up to? Is it always a four-year institution? Potentially, because we need good engineers for many of these high-end businesses that we have. But that's not exclusive. So what does that number look like? Where do we belong in our future 2030? And then, of course, we've had the benefit of having Connexus Group, who has done an amazing job of looking at sectors of the economy and identifying how we might be able to understand what our data sets really are. And Todd's going to join us in just a few minutes to give some of that update. But as we move forward in this conversation, I wanted to first make sure that we talk about those folks who are out on the road on a daily basis, working towards growing the economy, working towards bringing and growing industries and so forth here in Southwest Michigan, because our metrics have asked us to look towards a growth in population, towards a growth in economic success for all of Berrien County. How do we get there? Well, we know that Rob Cleveland is one of those who leads that organization. So please help me welcome Rob as we talk a little bit about this labor mismatch that may exist in our county. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all. As John mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about data, and I'm going to try to be brief. And certainly stop me if you've got any questions. I'm going to talk about just a couple of things. I'm going to talk today about industry clusters, which I think hopefully everybody has a fairly decent idea about. And then I'm going to talk about a very specific thing to economic development, and that's called location quotient. And we focus on that a lot because just like all of you, certainly on the municipality side, we're constantly weighing how we allocate our resources. Do we focus on our deficiencies and things we've got to improve in order to bring new people to the area, or do we focus on our strengths, right? And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of the strengths and how we focus on location quotient. So again, hopefully everybody's familiar with the concept of industry clusters. It's been around now for more than 100 years, and it's essentially says that industries that engage in similar economic transactions find it beneficial to be located near other companies that do the same thing. So you'll see here, again, Detroit with the automotive industry, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, ironically enough, is a very good example of an industry cluster focused on the movie-making industry, obviously. Warsaw, Indiana with the medical device and as well as Elkhart. Now, there's some very positive things to having an industry cluster. There are also some very negative things, right? I'm going to be the first one that tells you I would have nothing to do with the Elkhart economy based on when things start to go south. But there are some very, very positive things. There's a benefit there for skilled labor and the ability to recruit people that have similar interests and skills. And so that bleeds into an economic development concept that we call location quotient. And it's a pretty basic concept and some complex math, but essentially location quotient, or what we call LQ, it gauges the relative industry sector or the employment in that industry and compares it to a larger industry sector from a geographic standpoint. So in many cases, you're comparing your local community, your local economy, to the national economy. And so for us, we use the entire county. Our county is in the it's officially the Niles-Benton Harbor MSA. So when we compare location quotient, we take Berrien County and compare it to the national average. Now, there's some benefits there. Location quotient, there's some, just like any other data source, there's some good and there's some bad. So the location quotient will help us identify industries and employment sectors that maybe we didn't know had a very high concentration and very high skill level and are areas that maybe we didn't know about. Some negatives, there's certainly, if you're using the employment number, and I'm going to show you that here in a little bit, the negative there is certainly with all of the new automation in the last 15 years, employment figures are not always the best numbers to use. But we're going to talk about location quotient from an industry standpoint and from an employment standpoint. And then it's important for you to understand the location quotient scale is on a 1.0 scale. So 1.0 means your geographic area has the exact same of what it would be on a national scale. So in many cases, the location quotient of teachers and nurses in any community is going to be 1.0. Certainly in Cleveland with the Cleveland Clinic, your nurses and your doctors are going to be above a 1.0, but there are a lot of industries that are going to statistically be right at 1.0. Teachers and nurses are a good example. Anything above a 1 means that your community is excelling in that area. You have a higher concentration, and certainly anything below 1 is an area that is deficient. And so I've got some of those to share with you as well. So I printed out a list here, and hopefully you'll have it in your packet, and I can give John all of this information. But the important thing here is this is a look at our location quotient by industry. So not by jobs, but by industry. And so it should come as no surprise to anybody that we have 2.5 times the manufacturing operations in Berrien County than they do on the national average. And certainly an area that we've got to continue to support And because ultimately we use this data to go out and recruit companies. So there are areas in this country when a site selector or a company are looking to relocate, they don't go if they're a manufacturer, because there are areas of this country where people don't know how to manufacture things. They don't know how to assemble things with their hands. And we often take that for granted in this area because it's what our parents and our grandparents and all these generations of people in the Midwest have done. But manufacturing is a huge area we have to continue to push. The negatives at times of location quotient are what you see down below. So crop production, apple orchards, grape vineyards, right? There's limited things we can do to add to that industry in our economy, short of tearing down homes, which I don't think we want to do, John, and putting in more orchards. We're not going to expand on that. But again, what this does for us too is also validates the data. It should come as no shock to anybody that we have 6 times the national average of apple orchards and grape vineyards. But some other things, one of the things we get asked all the time, and I'm sure you guys here, aren't we at a tipping point for breweries and wineries, and 6.75 times the national average breweries in Berrien County? Peter Clovis and I are not helping the brewery industry, but there's plenty of folks in the room who are. But again, some really high level here, high numbers. Primary metal manufacturing, forging and stamping. These are core industries that we have 5 times, 6 times, 8 times the national average. And so, again, these are the data for data geeks, John. I love this kind of stuff. We have 3.4 times the number of libraries in Berrien County that they do on a national average. I'm not even going to get into fights with librarians about that, but I thought it was important to point out. So again, from an industry standpoint, this gives us a guidebook to say we should go out and recruit these companies, especially in the environment we're in nationally right now where people are fighting for talent. Companies are coming in saying we're going to pay $1 more and we're going to take employees from the existing companies. And that's been going on for a long time, but it's certainly more true now than it's ever been. So when you have a metalworking machine manufacturing company, they're looking at these kinds of numbers and saying, man, Berrien County has 13 times the national average. We know we'll be able to find people. So taking it one more step, and then this is my last slide. This is our location quotient by job. And so again, some of these may really shock you, but one of the things that I mentioned to John Prose was we had a site selection firm right before COVID. The site selector reached out and said, hey, we have a tool and die company that is interested in relocating from Alabama, and they are looking at the top 5 location quotient counties in the country. And so we were on the map not because of our proximity to the lake, not because of any other metric other than we have a high concentration of tool and die manufacturers. The 3rd highest concentration in the country, right here in Berrien County. Nuclear engineers, 14 times the national average of nuclear engineers. 5th highest concentration in the U.S. You take it one step, one more layer down, on the nuclear engineering side, we are the 3rd highest paying county in the country. So not only do we have 15 times the national average, but we're paying our nuclear engineers higher than we are in the country, and that is not weighted. So many times, the highest paid communities in the country are going to be in California, in New York. So for us to really be standing out in that area, it says a lot about the amount that we're paying nuclear engineers. But you'll see a whole lot of other things here. Next on the list, computer numerically controlled tool operators. That is going to be the people employed by JR Automation, Edgewater Automation, Eagle Technologies, who are doing amazing things. The 2nd highest concentration of those folks in the country are working here in Berrien County. So a whole lot more there. Machinists, new account clerks. This is an interesting one, the 3rd one from the bottom. 5 times the national average of new account clerks. And I did print off the definition, so I've got it here. But interview persons desiring to open accounts at financial institutions. So again, financial institutions is much like your nurses and your teachers. Our location quotient of banks in Berrien County is about 1.0. Our location quotient for credit unions is 7 times the national average. So that's why the new account clerks is so much higher, is when you add the bank and the credit union location quotient, we have a lot of new account clerks. But what I think is important about this list, and then I'm going to shut up, this is an economy for everyone. There are college degrees required on this list, and there are jobs that don't require. There are jobs that require CTE skills. New account clerks don't require a college education. I'm a proponent that the goal of every high school in this county should be that every student graduates and goes to college. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but that's ultimately how we're going to grow our economy. But this right here, the highest location quotient jobs in our county is an economy for everybody. So. A lot of data, and we could go on and on all day. So just to give you a couple of examples, right at 1 for our location quotient, social and community service managers, loan officers, elementary, middle, and high school teachers, pharmacists, another one, right at 1.0. Some areas were deficient, very deficient. Lawyers, we have 0.2. We have 0.2 of the national average of attorneys, and high-skilled, high-wage. Claims adjusters, 4/10 of the national average. Here's one that really struck out that we have to focus on. We talk about the computer numerically controlled tool operators, a huge, huge opportunity for us, both from an industry and a job standpoint. The number of people in Berrien County working in computer and mathematical occupations is 0.38 of the national average. We are not educating enough kids and bringing them back in computer and mathematical engineers. So that's a deficiency that we can then parlay into a strength of ours. So I think that's it. Wanted to try and tie all that together. So if you got any questions on location quotient, I'm happy to discuss it. All right. Yeah. So yes, and that's where there's a lot of opportunity for growth, and I don't think there's any media who's going to misquote me here today, but we got to continue to focus on the tool and die and the stamping and those sorts of activities, but it's why we also have to make sure we're maintaining focus on the automation sector, and nobody in the country is better suited for that, because those folks are still making machines that are used in Tesla and a lot of those EV things. They can't talk about it, and we don't talk about it too often, but those kinds of things are going on in the county where they're supplying equipment to the Tesla plants in Nevada. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. There are so many areas of information that we can share on this labor question that we wanted to also look at it in its reality on the ground right now. And so the Best Practices Committee reached out to the local municipalities who participate in best practices just to gather some anecdotal data. What do we know about is happening right now in our municipalities? What kind of a risk factor do they have? And to help give a little bit of background on that one, the supervisor of Chickaming Township, please welcome Dave Bunty.
I really appreciate Rob's data, but as a municipal leader, there are more attorneys and lawyers in this county than we are aware of. Trust me. Especially in Chickaming Township, trust me. So what we did is informally poll the members of BPC and try to get some data from them as to how many open positions we have. So of the 16 municipalities that responded, there are currently greater than 85 positions that are open in municipal government and services. So there are critical needs currently. Your problem in your basement, Mr. Proust, we get on a daily basis. We have public safety, probably the #1 critical need in Berrien County right now, probably across the country, that we need to address. Water, sewer, employees and staff, extremely critical. When your water line gets broken, or when your sewer goes out, or when they're building something next door and all of a sudden you've gotten a broken pipe. These are our biggest concerns now, probably more than anything from an employment level. Decades ago, public safety personnel, first responders, firefighters would be able to leave their job and respond to a call. That's how the system was built. And nowadays, the lack of individual farming communities, individuals and entrepreneurs and small business, you've got a changing demographic of people now that are not able to leave a job and go and respond to a fire or to a medical emergency. Something we critically need to address. So this data probably you're talking about 36 or 38 communities, I think, municipalities in Berrien County, but it's a critical need right now. And how many are close to retirement and what kind of positions they hold. So in the next 12 to 18 months, got 136 personnel that are close to or approaching retirement. We have an aging demographic in municipal government, in services, in public services. And how do we plan on filling all of those open positions? We presently are robbing Peter to pay Paul when it comes to public safety personnel. They're paying $1 extra in New Buffalo Township. Now I've got to pay $1.50 extra in Chickaming Township to maintain that staff person. We cannot continue to poach talent from one community to the next in order to plan. That isn't planning for the future. That is just whack-a-mole concepts where you're just moving people around. It just won't work out. So I'm going to pretty much wrap this up with asking a lot of questions here of you. So when you go into these breakout sessions, I want you to think about them. So can our business community react by allowing first responders or firefighters to leave a position without penalizing them? Bring it back to your small business, to your large business. Is it a reward system? Is it a positive as opposed to it being a negative? Do we approach it in that perspective at this point in time? Are we really appealing to a younger demographic here in Berrien County? We're all aging, obviously. We can look at this room, myself included. But what are we doing to appeal to that younger demographic? Their needs and their lifestyles and their work ethic has all changed from, I know when I was 20, 30 years younger, I think when the majority of us were. Are we going to complain about their current ethic or what they do and don't want, or are we going to look to the future and how are we going to change our mental capacity to plan for that? I do it all the time when I'm hiring or interviewing young people. I'm like, oh, they just don't think the way that I do. Well, they just don't think the way that I do. But that's okay. We just have to shift and look at it differently. What is setting the county apart from other areas that we want people to relocate here? We've gone through broadband, we've gone through housing, we've gone through all of these. These are all totally interconnected. Are we working across borders? Are we working with our next door neighbors in order to bring in some changes in our housing structure? Are we looking at our infrastructure, whether it's water, sewer, broadband? Where does that start? Are you engaged with your planning commissions? Are you engaged with your master plan in your individual communities in order for us to solve all of these problems? Because you need to be. It's easy to sit back and go to them. You don't want the house that's coming in next door that seems to be a foot over the lot line. It's like, oh my gosh, that's encroaching on my property or it's encroaching on my rights. But are you really engaged in your local municipal government and understanding that I can't think the way I did 10, 20, 30 years ago? We're planning now for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So I have a little something on my desk I've had since I was elected back in 2016, which seems like 30 years ago. It says, if nothing changes, nothing is going to change. And I encourage all of you to think about that and change. Change is a negative word no matter which way you look at it, but hopefully this will help. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. With some more very specific data of what's happening in the community, what's happening in these industry sectors themselves, I think you're beginning to see the threads that are being threaded together here, right? Some of the labor mismatch, some of the concerns that we have in particular industries. How can we attract and grow new business and industry? Are we maintaining the ones that we currently have? So following that last presentation is Todd Gustafson, who will be joining us with a little bit more on some of those sectors and some of the specific data around there. And then batting cleanup is Arthur Havlicek with some more anecdotes from the field on just exactly what's happening. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I was remarking in the hall, I kind of felt like everybody this morning was really positive. They got great things going on with the parks and broadband, and now we get to talk about workforce. But listen, you can't fix it if you don't know it's broken or acknowledge that it's broken. And as you've seen, and we've been warning, it's broken. But there's some things we can do. But I'm also about data, so let me share with you some of the data we have to support what we're talking about. All right, you've heard this from us before. We're getting older, we're getting smaller, and we're getting less educated. Since 2010, which we went back roughly a little more than 10 years, had we gone back another decade, the trajectory stayed the same. We're still on the downslope. We've lost about 3,700 people, which is about a 2.4% decline. Our current median working age is 41.2 years old, which is 1.4 years older than the state and the nation. And Michigan, by the way, is roughly the 10th oldest state in the nation. 7.7% of Berrien County does not have a high school diploma or equivalent. I'm going to show you more detail about that in a second. So again, these are some trend lines that we want to bring to your attention. We recognize we can do things about them as other communities are as well. All right, labor force participation. This is like the new sexy workforce language that we all came to realize what it might be during COVID. It's about the number of people that are actually have a job or are looking for a job. And as you can tell, in Berrien County, our labor force participation rate has declined, and it has been declining, and it's been lower than the state and the nation. It's bounced back a little bit since COVID, as more people start to come back into the labor force, which is a positive. Since August 22, labor force participation, there were 72,124 people. That's a 3.5% decrease over 10 years. So again, the labor force, the post-COVID, is still less than it was 10 years ago. Unemployment rate, 4.5%. Employment rate, 56.7%. The employment rate is an important metric. It's the number of people between the ages of 15 and 64 that are eligible for work or could be working. In Berrien County, 56.7% of them are working. Now, some of them may not be working because they're retired, they're in school, or they're disengaged. The Berrien County population fell from 156,000 in 2010 to 153,000. This is equivalent to a loss of 2.4% or 3,700 people. Over the course of the pandemic, the county's population fell, again, as I mentioned. We lost about 400 citizens over that time period. Is everybody sufficiently depressed now? All right, a couple things. There's a couple sectors that drive our economy in Berrien County. We're positioned really well, as Rob mentioned earlier. We have a diverse economy. Manufacturing, healthcare, tourism, and hospitality lead the region's economy. The one that I didn't put up on here, and I wish I would have now that I heard David's presentation, which is government. The government is actually the third largest sector in Berrien County. And as he mentioned, they too need people and have been losing staff or are looking for staff. Manufacturing is the largest sector. It's 11,800 payroll jobs. I don't know that you can see this way in the back room, but this kind of corresponds with what Rob was saying about those occupations. And again, we have a large number of industrial engineers, mechanical engineers, nuclear engineers. I see Shane was here earlier. If you want a really good high-paying job to be a nuclear engineer, I'd see him in the hallway after. New accounts clerks, as Rob mentioned, structural metal fabricators and fitters, and then machinists. So we do have a skilled population of workers within the manufacturing sector. This is by no means comprehensive of the sector. The other one is healthcare, right? There's 7,800 payroll jobs in Berrien County, which is about 13% of the total. There are 3% fewer healthcare jobs in Berrien County than would be expected for a county of our size. Leisure and hospitality, which is the fourth largest private sector in Berrien County, there's 6,300 payroll jobs, which is about 10% of all the jobs in Berrien County. There are 11% more leisure and hospitality sector jobs in Berrien County than would be expected for a county our size. So again, manufacturing, healthcare, we could put government in there, and then leisure and hospitality. Those are the sectors that drive our economy. So when Rob talks about the sectors and supporting those that are of the greatest importance to your region, these are Berrien County sectors. So if we have finite resources, then these are the sectors we're going to want to figure out how to support better than we have been. All right, I talked about the skill level. So this is Berrien County. There are 3 categories: low-skilled, middle-skilled, and high-skilled. And the definitions for low-skilled is essentially individuals with no educational credential or at the highest a high school credential. 30% of the people in Berrien County, or roughly 26,000 people, are low-skilled people. And we're behind the state of Michigan and also the nation in terms of higher middle-skilled and high-skilled jobs. So, middle school, individuals with some post-secondary education as their highest level of educational attainment, but less than a 4-year college degree. Total middle skill population is 23,000 plus. Total middle skill workers in the labor force, 18,000 or 32%. Then high skilled, these are individuals with a bachelor's degree or higher, and there's about 21,000 in the labor force with about 37%. These numbers are behind the rest of the state and the nation. All right, labor force. That also means the pipeline and the youth. We always talk about the youth, right? In 2011, there were 26,000 Berrien County students enrolled in K through 12. There are currently 24,200 K-12 students in Berrien County, which is a decrease of 1,700 plus, or about a 6.8% decline. Over the same period of time, the state of Michigan saw an 8.6% decline, and the nation experienced a 0.2%. The other metric that you might want to look at, and we often discuss, is disconnected youth. Now, this number has bounced back up since or post-COVID, but it's still highly elevated compared to the rest of the state, which is disconnected youth, meaning they should be in school or some type of programming in which they're not. Either you can't find them or they're unwilling to participate. And then last but not least, in Berrien County, the dropout rate is about almost 14%, or 338 youth with the last cohort that we looked at. So again, these are the pretty stark numbers that we're facing in Berrien County. And if we don't recognize those challenges and figure out how to align our resources and our efforts to support them, we'll be at a competitive disadvantage. And so when Rob does go and talk to other companies about potentially expanding or relocating here, this is a challenge. The good news is we do have highly concentrated areas of skills. Continuing to support those and grow those will put us at a competitive advantage in those areas. And so we don't want to lose sight of that. So all the information I have is not totally bad news. But those are the facts. That's the data, and I hope that helps you informed so you can make informed decisions. So thanks, John. Thank you.
All right, and batting cleanup right now as we talk about these particular labor concerns and labor mismatches, as we try to set ourselves apart from other municipalities, other regions of the state, other regions of the nation, for that matter, so that we can continue to see our mission as Strategic Leadership Council be successful. We have to understand where we are today, and that's really what this next phase of the conversation is about. So please welcome Arthur Havlicek.
There I am. All right, good morning, everybody. So I get the honor of trying to wrap this all up, and towards the end of my comments, I'm going to try to be sort of solution-oriented. So, you know, as the regional chamber for Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren County, this workforce issue has been priority 1A for our members. There's not a single one of them that has not been dealing with this, either from a recruitment standpoint, a retention standpoint, or frankly, just upskilling the talent that they do have. So we have multiple different ways that businesses in our community are grappling with this, and not just businesses, as we heard, governments and other organizations as well. And so because of its importance, I've spent more and more time engaging on the issue, both at the state level through my involvement I'm on the board of the Michigan Association of Chamber Professionals, and then recently a U.S. Chamber Fellowship, which is focused on workforce and education. And unfortunately, so far, what I've found is there's no silver bullet, right? This is a complex issue. But I have taken back with me some observations. And the first is that every single state in our country and every community within the state, every state and further down, they're dealing with this issue, just like we are. They're struggling. Even the ones that we look at and we think that, oh, they're growing population by double-digit % year over year, it's still not enough. Since COVID, we're down 2.9 million workers across the country. All 50 states have more job openings than they did pre-pandemic. Only Oregon, Colorado, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Wisconsin have a higher percentage of their labor force working than before the pandemic. Labor force participation rates have been at a historic low for over 2 years now, and Michigan's is lower than the national average. In fact, Michigan has roughly 75, maybe 77 unemployed individuals for every 100 jobs. So we're certainly operating in a deficit. Every state is. And absent a major change in immigration policy, our supply of talent is going to become even tighter than it is today. Between 2011 and 2021, nearly every county in the United States saw its working age population decline. Think about that for a second. The US birth rate has also declined 18% over that same period of time. So what this amounts to essentially is talent scarcity, right? And those who understand the economic concept of scarcity understand that there are three main causes. Demand-induced, there are more jobs than there were pre-pandemic available. Supply-induced, there are less people coming up through the pipeline than ever before. And structural, right? So considering how difficult the first two are to tackle, successful, or I should say more successful, communities and companies have really gone all in on the third, and that's structural. How? Well, from my observation, they've really viewed talent like a supply chain and applied some of the same principles. With supply chains, you get what you plan for, right? Companies often plan years in advance to ensure they have enough stock to meet their needs. You do not see Ford going to procure ball bearings the month that they need them. They're doing it well in advance. And it's in stark contrast to the numbers game previously employed to simply attract bodies and hope that they can do something for you. And simply poaching individuals from other companies and communities is not a sustainable model long term. So with fewer bodies to go around, we need to be smarter about who we recruit, we need to match them to our industry needs, and we need to grow the future talent pipeline at the same time. So what are some of these supply chain strategies that can be applied? Well, first, we need to reevaluate requirements, right? 62% of occupations today are less likely to require a college degree than in 2017. 1 in 5 skills are entirely new, and certain sectors, finance, design, media, writing, business management, and operations, HR, IT, those have changed faster than others. Second, source more broadly. We are now able to recruit from a wider set of feeder jobs and geographies. Remote work allows for this more than ever. We can hire somebody on the other side of the country whose skills meet the needs of our company. but also shifting skill requirements allow you to pull from more unconventional sources. 3, maximize what you already have. To offset rising wages and make do with fewer workers, we're simply going to need to boost productivity. Automation isn't the only tool for doing this. Specific skills can actually make workers more productive and more valuable. And this means we need to continually upskill our current workforce so that they have the competencies needed to do their job as their job continues to evolve. And last but most importantly, work closely with suppliers. Companies and the private sector need to share detailed job specifications with our K-12 institutions, our colleges, four-year universities, in order for them to meet our evolving needs. This includes meeting with them regularly, providing them with access to relevant experts and technology, discussing their emerging requirements, evaluating reciprocal performance, and offering data-driven feedback. By 2025, there will be an increased demand for data analysts and scientists, software and applications developers, e-commerce, social media specialists, but there will also be an accelerating demand for new specialist roles like AI and machine learning specialists, big data specialists, process automation experts, robotics engineers, and blockchain specialists. I really don't know what any of those jobs do, frankly. But what I do know is that a blockchain engineer, the demand for that job has increased 400% since 2017, and that demand is only going to grow. So in summation, we're living in a complex, modern economy, and for every other thing that we need, it requires a sophisticated, data-driven, expertly managed supply chain. The sooner that we can build one for talent, the better off we'll all be.
Thank you, Arthur. I appreciate it. That leads us very directly into what this particular challenge is. Berrien County's reality, right? We know that today's reality has just been identified by multiple different individuals who lead sectors of the economy and look very broadly at those sectors. I could have easily brought up any one of our educators in the audience today because they, in fact, are addressing some of these questions very directly. Lake Michigan College is doing the same. Southwestern is doing the same. But all of us together have not yet coordinated that message, nor have we coordinated what the reality is or what the fact-based reality is for us to fix, as Arthur put it, and succinctly so, the supply chain. And then how are we leaning in on that supply chain to make that happen? So if we have this particular message in front of us, let's use that message as we move to the next phase. Let's move into 3 groups. We'll make it quick, 10 to 15 minutes max. We'll do a brief report out at the end. The idea is to get ourselves thinking as 3 separate sectors, right? Each very important in their own areas, but each very much a part of the kind of data that is going to be necessary for us to understand where our problem is and where the mismatch is in terms of labor. So on your tables in the next 3 rooms, you will find this room is room 103, according to the way that LMC has it laid out. So room 103, business and industry, please stay here. The easel in the back with the paper will give you if you needed to, but the idea is to report out on 4 questions that are coming. Room 102 is the middle room, right out to my left, your right. Room 102, not-for-profit. Again, there's a bunch of tables, an easel, some pens and paper, and so forth. You'll have some instructions in there. Again, 10 to 15 minutes. This isn't intended to solve the problem today. It's intended to get the wheels turning from your view and your perspective on how we can lean into this new project, recognizing that it really is the project for our future in Berrien County. And then the government operations folks, why don't you head to room 101, which is just through both doors then, to the very far room. Grab a snack along the way, be back in 15 minutes, and we'll report out just exactly where these questions lead us. Thank you. To show on the easel to my left, your right, and I'm happy to help to flip that, or one of your participants in that group maybe can help to flip that at that time. Would that work? Does that make sense? Is that good? All right, excellent. We have microphones that are already out there. The microphone will be turned on for you, so it'll be live. If we could begin with the not-for-profit group, the room 102, the middle group. right after Rich takes a drink. Right, exactly. Yeah, sorry about that. We're just going to bounce around a little bit and keep it lively. All right, thank you very much.
Hello. We opted not to do a pad. So we had a number of really great points that were brought up. Question number one about current labor challenges and impact on the sector of nonprofits. And we think if we could really manage that particular piece, we could provide better services and get closer to the fulfillment of the mission of our nonprofit groups. We believe it would take the pressure off of the nonprofit staffs and organizations, allowing people to be more effective in their positions. We see that also with better staffing and people who are better prepared, that we could potentially do more innovation in terms of service provision than we're able to do right now in the nonprofit world. Let's see. So question 2 was, in addition to labor information, what was presented today, or that was presented today, what other data do you believe is needed to properly assess the challenge? So we are interested in finding out more about who's funding not-for-profits in the area, because we think that philanthropy, whether it be government, corporate, or individual, is something that we need to look at long-term in order to be able to provide the services. With the nonprofit sector being the size it is in Berrien County, there are a lot of people employed in different organizations who are affected by these conditions. So if we want to improve employment in the non-for-profit sector, we've got to really make sure that we've got steady sources of funding to support the various missions. I think that there are some structural barriers to employment that are affecting our ability to be more successful with aging and shifts in demographics. We are not meeting all the needs that we would like to meet in terms of finding employees, but also in service delivery. We think that it kind of, as we heard earlier, takes a sort of shift in people's mentality who are currently involved in the nonprofits to take a look more broadly at who might be successful people to make contributions to these organizations as employees. So working with people who work differently, working with different types of employment where people are offsite or working virtually can help with some of these issues of finding the right people for these positions. Let's see, where else are we? So participating in the next phase of the project, it would be nice to consider the SLC as a place where data could be collected about who's actually employed in the nonprofit sector. Some of the information we saw earlier that broke down the different employment sectors, that having that information a little bit more detailed available to others as well would be a good thing. And we need to look at a long-term strategy to make sure that funding is in place. And again, SLC is an opportunity to help us identify where people can make contributions and maybe even develop campaigns to make the current contributions more successful and to get us where we need to be long term. We think too that we need more mentors. As people are aging in this sector, there are a lot of people who have wisdom to impart to others, and we want to capture that before it's gone, and to prepare the people for these positions as people age out and retire. I think housing also was another issue that we felt impacted this particular sector because of the cost of housing increases. We've not been able to keep up with wages and employment, and our positions are going unfilled because we don't have access to people who can actually do the work. They can't afford to live in our communities, and they're just not here. And they don't want to come here. So we believe that those are issues that need to be addressed in conjunction with the other things that we've heard today. That we believe that this is part of the same ecosystem. So I think that was it, right?
Yeah,
Anything else?
Just a small point that we really focused on in our group setting was really looking at why do we have some of the labor challenges. Really looking at some of the structural barriers, some of the obstacles that individuals, especially in our community, whether it's community of color or any other community in Berrien County, what are those things that we can address to help cultivate, right? We have to start at a very young age and help these individuals understand that, especially these individuals who all they know, right, is getting either government support, government aid, and how do we help them to transform the way they think? How do we help prepare these individuals for the next phase of innovation and what that looks like? And so we spent a lot of time delving deep into some of these structural issues to why we have these labor challenges and what we can do as a collective group to be able to help individuals change their mentality.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. Why don't we invite the government group to come up if we could, please. And David, if you wanted, the camera shot and the easel will work if you wanted to stand just in front or up at the podium, whichever one you're comfortable with.
Okay, real quick. Question one was, if we solve the current labor challenges, what impact would it have on government sector? We'd no longer have to poach talent. We would be more effective, more consistent in our infrastructure services. We'd have less burnout, and we'd have consistent public safety services with little limitation. In addition to the labor information which was presented, what other data do you believe is needed to assess the challenge? We have a lot of data that we feel we still need in order from a government perspective. Education and how to improve. We need the data from education, how to improve that whole process. We need to reassess and evaluate the use of staff. How are they evaluated? Reassessment of what those positions entail. We need info on career ladders. We need how the housing market and the labor market intersect. And that will assist us tremendously. Supportive industries that aid other top industries. So we've got, I believe Terry was the one that mentioned this on the farming community, how it supports and aids the rest of the hospitality sector or food insecurity sectors or those types of, how does that interact and what can we do, what data can we get from that? Bottom-up data from municipalities. John recommended this from St. Joe. Come into each of us individually and collect the data necessary. We can tell you what our vacancies are. We can tell you what our needs are, and that may help really support in us to get a bigger picture of what that all looks like. And then info from schools on potential candidates. So we need to get from the education system, they need to get us and feed us, or we can go to them as well. Let's go in there and say, we're going to be needing X number of firefighters, or we're going to need X number of water or sewer personnel. Whatever that looks like over the course of the next few years, feed that into the pipeline as candidates from schools that don't necessarily want to go to college. They just want to get right out into the workforce, and they may have the skills that are required or necessary for those types of positions. Number 3, do we have labor-related information we can contribute? Needs for each community, we can share that data. The needs and data indicators, the age of workers, we can share that data to help facilitate this, more flexibility in public safety personnel. We need this from the state. They just increased the standards for testing for entry-level positions and for renewals on FMR, I think, fire and safe and MFR positions. It's just almost prohibitive for young people to get into the system now. They just won't take the time. And then at number 4, how will you participate? There are immigration opportunities that we felt that aren't being addressed and looked at, that we should as a county start to really dig deep and find out how can this assist us? How can we assist a bigger picture here? And then finally, we need to promote and market the area as the place to live, work, and play. Very little marketing goes into it, aside from the Michigan tourism, but for Berrien County, we need to promote ourselves.
Big hand. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, David, and our government side of the equation. Business and industry, excellent. Jeff Ray, welcome.
All right, I'll try to be quick. We had some robust conversation at our table on all 4 topics, as each of you did. First, as we talk about solving the current challenges, things like you already heard, economic growth, of course, is an important part of that. Better services at the places that we go, better experiences for people that are patronizing business and stuff. We become more competitive, create some new opportunities as well as we have a full labor force and maybe spurs some new industries. It's also an important indicator that we're doing the right things as an area too. It's a signal that we've been successful in attracting new people and we're doing some of the right things. On the second one, if we're talking about labor information, education, college affordability, labor information, skill sets of the jobs that we're trying to attract, further the demand curve, a look at how tourism and rentals have changed, what are going to bring people and jobs here, just a number of things there. On what data we have available, the financial institutions have some good data on the macro level, Lake Michigan College, on education post-secondary, some good housing data, and some outsourcing produce crops, some other anecdotal data. And then finally, our group was willing to participate, whether it's committee work or meetings or gatherings or data, an important topic that I think everybody felt like they would be very engaged in. So really quick high level there. So.
Excellent. Thank you all. I appreciate it. It's been a full day. It's difficult for everybody to stay for the entire impact of what the full day is like, but each of these particular breakouts, I think, set the stage for a conversation that is going to need to be a robust conversation. I was struck by the fact that it was compared by our speakers in this particular section as the negative portion. I think negative is the lens that you could use, but I don't think that's the lens that the Strategic Leadership Council intends to use. If we solve this sort of an equation on labor in advance of every other region and every other county in the state, we will realize the sorts of success that businesses and industries, government, and our not-for-profit sectors are seeking. But it's going to require all of us to lean into this particular project with the data that you can provide, as well as the kind of conversations that will be necessary around that table to actually ask the tough questions of what it's going to take to be able to coordinate talent, to be able to coordinate education, to be able to identify that if our trajectory in population is X, how do we achieve Y? It's going to take some time for us to do that. Jeff's going to wrap us up in a second. I will amend the slides and get them all to you on what the fall asks are. But for now, let's go ahead and wrap up today. We're just at our extended time. And again, a couple quick housekeeping notes. First off, to all of our speakers, thank you very much for helping to lead. For all of those who participate in Strategic Leadership Council, especially our board members, thank you for, again, taking time to look at this collective impact organization as a value to the community and to the region as we continue to try to grow and develop. And then finally, a thank you to Lake Michigan College, Dolphy on all of our audiovisual systems, Susan at the Strategic Leadership Council, Thank you all so very much, and I certainly appreciate our food service staff too. They've done a great job. They've really worked well, but I got to tell you, it was kind of indicative to this challenge we all face, right? They were scrambling this morning at the last minute to be prepared, and we see that in so many sectors of the economy today, but we thank them all very much. So how about a big hand for all of those folks who participated, and thank you. All right, with that, our co-chair, Jeff Fettig, to wrap us up.
Well, let me just conclude all this. Couple points I'd like to make. First of all, thank you to everyone. Even though I see it periodically, month by month, it's exciting and encouraging to see how you all continue to drive actions, make progress around the priorities that we set. I think we saw that today in terms of the progress reports we had. And again, John, I'll kind of follow up with the ask, but so far everybody stood up to the call, and we are in fact making progress. Second of all, this last topic about beginning to frame and define the whole labor force, supply, pipeline, et cetera, without a question, it is a major challenge. It is, by the way, in most parts of the world. It certainly is in the United States, and on and on and on. And as I've said, I don't know how we begin to address this from a macro level, but I'm certain that we can make progress in Berrien County. And again, it's an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? You break it down into parts. And I think defining this as a critical challenge for our next, for tomorrow even, but certainly for the next 10 years is critical to our success. And then lastly, we talked about a couple of times in the meeting. Look, the people in this room are leaders throughout our community. I would encourage you, to me, to Lauren, to John, anybody on the board, if you know individuals or roles within the community that should, be part of the organization, we need to bring more people, not less, to the table. That's going to improve the effectiveness of all of us. It'll make us stronger as a region, if you will. And after 8 years, we have made a lot of progress, but the challenges are no less. The trend lines we got to change, and we can only do. Not one of us can change these things by ourselves, but collectively, there's nothing that we're looking at here that we can't change together, and I mean that sincerely. And lastly, thanks to John and Susan for keeping us on track and pushing us forward. There's a lot of work that you all know that goes on between these meetings, and we appreciate all your help. So thanks, everybody, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.